All right, we're going to continue on with our project here. And with the previous video, we determined that our next step was to be to write these two classes that we need to create. And from the problem description in the document, they tell us very explicitly that we need to create a question class that inherits from a tally class that's going to store all the totals. So what I wanted to do was basically create those files, and I wanted to talk about them as well in the format of the UML structure that we looked at last time, in terms of what methods, what things we are doing. So let me start where I think is logical for me at the very least. And instead of starting with tally, the one I'm going to inherit from, I'm going to start with question, because that makes more sense to me, and it might to you as well. So one way to proceed with this stuff is to kind of break things down like what we have here. Remember these UML, this is a very primitive text-based one. These UML documents where we have a class name, we have whatever data fields we have, and then we have whatever methods go with. And largely those are gets and sets for each thing that we're doing. So let's think about question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually code this. Actually, I'm tempted to do it in JGrass, but I think I'm going to do it in Eclipse. It doesn't really matter which tool you use. You can use Notepad++ if you wish. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close all the stuff I've got open here. And those of you looking at this, wondering what that is, that's like a preview of Java 2 if you're taking it. But we're going to go ahead and create a new project. And let's call it, what should we call it? Student survey. Probably what we called it back in class too, isn't it? Yeah, because it's logical. All right, so here's the framework here for my project. So inside the source folder, I'm going to begin by creating a new class file. And I determined that one of them is going to be called question. It's just going to be a class file. It's not going to have an executable component to it, so I don't need to have a main method. So I'm going to go ahead, just create it. So there's the base of it. Now, I'm trying to think of what goes into a question. Now, we know that each question has the question itself, which is what? String. So since we're doing data fields here, they're going to all be privates. We'll just say string, and what should we call it? Question? Might that cause a problem with the name of the class? Yeah, as long as it's lowercase, it should be fine. Let's do that. So we're going to have a question, and then each question is going to have 4 associated answers, right? So I'm just going to say answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, no spaces. Listen to what I'm saying, not what I'm typing. And answer 4. So those are the data fields. I don't need to pre-populate them here, right? Now, since I've created data fields, now I need to create the methods to go with, right? And each one of them basically needs a set and a get. Okay. Does anybody know a shortcut way to do that? You guys remember? Did I show you guys this?
Yes, you did.
I don't think I ever showed them, though, the shortcut.
You know, it kind of sounds familiar, but I don't really remember.
Watch this magic.
Oh, man. It's magic. Takes all the fun out of it.
There's all your sets and gets. Boom, done. Now, notice not only did it create them, it also set up the returns, what needs to come in. A string needs to come into each one that's getting set. It's going to return a string, so it's all preset. So each question and each of the 4 answers all have sets and gets now. All right. Is there anything else we need to do with the question? Yeah, it needs to extend, very good. It needs to extend tally because it told us that it has to. Now, tally does not yet exist. That's what we're going to create next. So let's just go ahead and save this one, and believe it or not, our work with this one should be done at this point. All right. So now I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to create a new class. This one we're going to call Tally. Once again, we don't need a main method. And there's the basis for the program. Now, question is, all right, the question answer part, that wasn't too bad, right? The question class. But what's Tally going to do? All right, so watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do a little pseudo coding. Did you say need variable for answers, for the answers, or the answer? Okay, so like wherever we're storing the total, right? Well, you know, I can just write that, right? So how many of those do we need? Okay, so it's really, they're ints. We're going to have 4 of them, 1 for each answer. Okay, so let's call them, that sounds good to me. ANS1.
That doesn't have to be private also.
Yeah, it does. It does need to be private. And a semicolon. I'm going to pause for a moment. All right, so we created the 4 variables. Now my question is, do we want to preset their totals? Why? Yeah, I want to preset them because when you first create the object, you want it to start at 0. Now remember, these are classes, so we're going to create an instance of question, and every instance of question is also going to create an instance of tally automatically, right? So when we first create it, that's what these values are going to be when we first create it. Subsequently, we will be able to change those values. Okay. All right, so I was going to do all this pseudo coding here, and I just kind of saved myself a bunch of steps. Now, next question. Do we need to do sets and gets for these? Why? Right on. We really don't need sets and gets for these. We're just going to keep adding. So could we write a snippet of code that's going to do that? Actually, add to total. This is going to be a method. And we want to make this public or private? Is it going to return anything? It's not going to return anything. It's just going to store the value. Okay, very good. So it's being suggested that I pass a value in, right? Because if we're going to add to the total, if we're adding to the total of an int, we're probably going to pass in an int. All right, and then what are we going to do? We're going to use a switch, spelled correctly, like this.
Case 1, 2, 3, 4.
Case 1, then what?
And then
instead of plus plus ANS1. ANS1 plus 1. And I believe it's plus 40.
That is correct.
You just change it to ANS2.
Oh, you mean I can copy paste here? When you're doing these, just make sure you're very consistent with how you're doing it. Okay? Now, when you're doing switch statements like this, it's considered good practice to have a default. Do we need a default here? No. Because basically we're going to send something in, it's just going to add to the total, whichever answer it is, and we're done. Yeah, want to be consistent and follow through, unlike what I just did. All right, I'm going to do a Control-S to save. Now, the other job that we might have here with Tally is, now we talked about this before in our pseudocode, if I remember right. Yeah, somewhere I thought we put a little thing in there about displaying stuff. Remember that? Right here. Get values from each object and display. This could be part of the Tally class. So maybe we can write a method in there. Once again, it'll be public. I'm not sure if it'll be void or whatever. We'll figure that out in a second. And we want to display tally or display totals. Does it matter? Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Yeah, display tallies. Does that need to have anything sent into it? Okay. Would it return anything? And what would it actually do? Yeah, it would just output stuff to the screen, right? So I could actually at least begin writing a statement. What would I be outputting? All right, but do I want to put some text in to describe? Okay. How about total for answer 1? And then what would I put here? Looks good. So we got 1 done. Yep, we can just lather, rinse, repeat. Anything else? That's good? Good. All right. The other thing that we might want to think about, and you guys might not be thinking about this, but we might also want to have a mechanism that's going to clear the tallies, right? And you can argue that maybe you don't really need to do that, but I think it's a good practice.
It just makes sense. You probably can change a particular question. Why would you want to keep the old bullets if you're filling the only question with only answers?
Right.
How would you have to declare into it? Could you just say ANS?
Well, they're already declared, so all I'm doing is turning them into statements, basically. There. Piece of cake. Tally class created.
No.
Question class created.
Would you want to print line saying that you cleared the vote?
Sure, if you want to do that.
So you actually know it went through.
Right. Somebody here just suggested that we want to put a message on the screen to show that something actually happened. I said, sure. Do you have to? No.
If you're there.
And you can see what I'm doing here. And this is maybe a habit you guys want to get into. I'm just putting blank lines in. Okay. Now that makes me think of something. You know what that makes me think of? At some, I mean, when are we going to do a clear tally? We're going to have to set up a mechanism for that, right? I don't know if it should be upon exiting. I think we might just want to offer it as an option here.
Maybe if you change the questions, then you want to do that automatically.
Yes, good point.
But you should still get the option if they're,
Good point. Yes, we could give the option to clear all of them without changing the questions, right? Or if you change the questions, you should clear it, right? So part of this process, and really this should probably be like, all right, just to give us a reminder to do it. All right, so we got the classes taken care of. So now watch how cool this is. We can start kind of crossing stuff off of our list. So let's use some sort of a indicator that it's done. How about dollar signs, right? All right, so those two tasks are done. All right, so let's think about this one here. It says create questions, add questions and answers to each object using sets. Really what we're doing, and I'm going to put it in different words, is we're going to instantiate questions and tallies because they're linked together, right? So that's really what we're doing that. So we can do that next. Should we do that next? Okay. That's an easy method, but this one where am I going to put this method? This should go in my main program, right? That's right. Now we need actually to create that class file. We haven't done that yet. Let's call that the same thing we're calling the project, which was student survey. That will need a main method, right? I think that's fine. All right. Now, I don't know if those of you watching the video are having maybe some trouble seeing what I'm typing. I know the people here in the classroom with their nice new projector probably aren't having any issues. But I'm concerned with people working on small screens. So I'm just going to bump up my font just a little bit. And that should be helpful. All right, I'm going to start by removing the comment. All right, so one thing that would be really wise to do is to think about, well, we have methods that we're going to create, but before we jump in and create methods, we might also want to think about what items we might need to add. Now, Chris, you mentioned that we're going to need the scanner, right, to get input. So we would do an import up here if you know the command. The other thing that you can do is you can always create the scanner, and then the question is going to be, do you do it inside the main method, Could you? Sure. Could you do it globally so that all the methods have access to it? That's my hint. I'm nodding my head. People on the video can't see that. Yeah, you want to do it globally because that way all of the methods in the program can access the scanner without having to create a new scanner each time. We just use one. All right. Now, because that's going to be a global here, we're going to make it public, and it's going to be static. And we're going to say scanner, and what do you want to call it? Input. Oh, I do. Good catch. I still have it inside the main. Leading myself astray. And that's going to be a new scanner. And then we use system in, and that's a process you guys should already be familiar with here. Now notice in Eclipse how it underlines. I'm hovering. It says scanner cannot be resolved to a type. 7 quick fixes available. How about this one? Import scanner. Boom, done. Isn't that nice? All right, so that's one thing we have out of the way. Now we have the need to create this one method we're talking about, but I also want to think about something else on a global level that's pretty important, because the method that we're about to build is create questions, right? We need a place to put the questions.
Would you do the same thing for like question, a question equals a question?
You're on the right track, absolutely.
Then we do-
Chris said that, can we make a new question? Well, absolutely, because we made a class for question just to do that. So we can do the same thing, and once again, we should operate on a global level. And the why is because the whole program needs to access it. Yeah. But tally, now remember this, when we create a new question object, tally's already automatically part of each one because it inherits. That's the beauty of it. All right, so I'm going to do that right here. So this is going to be public, private, static.
No, 'cause it's gonna change.
All right, we'll leave it off. We're going to create objects of type question, right? What are we going to call it?
A question.
Can we just call it questions? A question? Quests? QUES? That work? I'm actually okay with just calling it a question. And then new question, so we can call the default constructor. And then what are we going to put here? Anything? All right. Well, wait a second. I got to make 4 of those, right? Well, I need 4 questions, each with 4 answers. By creating the question, I automatically get the 4 questions that go with it. So I could either do this statement 4 times. So really it would be like question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. I could just do that 4 times. Or, food for thought, really more of a strong recommendation, I could make an array of question objects. How about that? I could put them all in the same array. Now, do you have to do it that way? No. Now, since I'm making an array, how many array positions do I need? 4. If I was to refer to the first array position by index value, it would be, and the last position, 3. That's right. I just want you to keep that in mind, because that's how we're going to refer to them. So question 1 will be referred to as question square bracket 0. Okay, so we created our globals.
And would you need that for answer?
No, and the reason for that is as soon as we create a question, answers are created automatically as well. The question class creates 1 question and 4 answers, and also has tally holders or repositories for each answer by virtue of tally. I see the wheels churning in your head, so. We have gets and sets for the answers too. Remember I did that all automatically? Well, the proof is in the pudding. So what we're going to do next, because remember, the one that we're working on right now is this one. We're working on this particular thing. Okay. But in order to make it work, I needed to, well, I guess I didn't need the scanner at this point. That would be a later thing. But I did need to create the 4 question objects that I'm now storing in an array. Okay. The reason I'm storing them in an array because it's easy to manipulate them that way. Thanks, Chris.
I would like to offer some suggestions. So
Sure.
this is the harder part of Java programming, object-oriented. So for question in particular, any of those private fields that we created, so question, answer 1, 2, 3, 4, those are essentially fields that belong to that object, kind of like how tires belong to a car, I guess. I mean, the car is an object, and it has all these different pieces that belong to it. It's steering wheel, power, air conditioning, radio. Those are all pieces of that object that you can use or need to be used to make the class run, essentially. So by creating question object, you're basically saying this object has these fields that will always be part of any object of question. So you could create 50 questions, and they're all separate questions, but they will always have a question string, an answer two string, etc., etc.
Right. Remember, the classes are blueprints. When we come in here in the main program body and we instantiate a question, we now have something that contains a question, 4 answers, and because it inherits from tally as well, it also has 4 spots to store the number of times those answers have been propagated, whatever. And then, in addition, those objects all have these methods included within their structure, independent of each other. So these are the blueprints. We use the blueprints to create the object. The object takes all the capabilities. So, for example, if I wanted to, let's say, clear the tally on question 4, I would just say question square bracket 4 dot clear tally parentheses semicolon done. And it just affects question 4. It's a little weird at first, but once you get the concept, and Brandon, I think you did a nice job explaining how objects work. And you think of something as an entire entity, but it's really a collection of smaller pieces. And it's kind of what we're doing with the program, too. The whole program is the program, but in order to make it work, I need all these little pieces. And each of these little pieces has its own little thing going on. Now, and that's not the only car that exists. There's many cars, and they all have the same pieces. All right, so I know the object-oriented thing is really the piece that kind of throws people off initially with object-oriented programming. It's when you get to creating higher-level programs where you're actually using the objects that you really, I think, appreciate what the objects do. And then all of a sudden, that key will turn. You go, aha, I get this all of a sudden, right? Because right now we're still struggling with like simplistic things, but.
hoping to get it by this Friday.
Oh yeah, well, this video will be out there Thursday morning. So you guys got a few days. All right, let's continue on. Just to remind ourselves, we are building this, right? So we instantiated the questions and tallies, and really the steps should be the other way around. This step really should follow that step, right? Because we created the questions, answers, and tallies, and now we're going to add questions and answer to each object. All right, so let's go back to Eclipse. We're going back to our main program, which is Student Survey, and now we're going to create a new class that we've decided to call Create Questions. That's not going to be part of the main method. It's going to be a separate method. Remember, the main method is our executable component. So we got our method created here, and now we're going to have to kind of ask ourselves, what is this going to be? This is going to be public?
Could be private, could be public.
And I'm using it for this program.
Right, it could be private. If it doesn't like it, it'll tell us. That's the beauty of using Eclipse, right? If you're using a program like JGrasp where it doesn't tell us, then you start going, why is it not working? You wait for the compiler to tell you. Is this going to return anything? No. So we can do static void? Yes, we can. Are we sending anything into it? No, it's just going to run. All right. So what I might do here, and this is going to be one of those things where I wish I had a scribe. Are you volunteering, Alana? And I might even truncate it a little bit. I might even truncate it even a little bit more. Creating a string. My first question. Let's come up with a question. No. You can compliment me all you want. Doesn't give you an A. Well, maybe it'll help. All right, let's come up with some questions that are kind of contemporary. God, this is supposed to be about current events, right? Well, rain is current. Okay, do you like? But that's going to be yes or no.
Oh, that's true. Well, yes, no, sometimes.
What's your
Here's one.
favorite brand of cereal?
Okay, well, you don't need to do it.
Here's one good brand.
Four.
Capture Crunch.
Oh, evil. All right.
Like, hello, raisin bran?
No.
Cracklin' oats?
I'm not
Oh, crackling oats. That's the stuff.
And you know that coconut? No.
Now, okay, so what I'm doing right now is like here I'm creating a string, and I'm thinking to myself, if I need to put this string directly into one of the questions I've instantiated, could I instead? Well, actually, I might do this a couple of different ways. Let me just finish my thought here. Okay, so one thing I could do is I could say, well, I created questions. So if I wanted to refer to the first question, I would say question 0. It's not liking something. What's it not liking here? Cannot make a static reference to a non-static field question, so I guess we need static. The other thing that I should show you is if I hover, it does it for me. Okay. Now it's not too crazy about this. Oh, we need to add an argument to it. What could we? Yeah, we could do Q1. I could even just drop the string directly in there. I could. Now, I'm trying to show you kind of a couple different methodologies. The other thing that you might think about over time is since we already put this into an array, right now we're only going to have 4 questions, but we could write this program to like populate the questions with loops so that way if we decided to instantiate 50 questions, we would just have to change a couple things in our code and But I'm not worried about that right now. Let's keep it simple. All right. So if we're going to do that once, we need to do it 3 more times. And I know there's different approaches for this, and you may have chosen a different way to do it. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And let's just go with what is your favorite as a theme.
You realize you deal with,
Yeah, that's okay. We're in Wisconsin, not Illinois.
you deal with nerds, so.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not all of us.
well, yeah, then they'll just, what would they answer for this then?
Married with children, all 11 seasons.
What is your,
Agree with children?
okay, nerds, what is your favorite software? All right, assuming they're nerds. All right, we also know that whatever we set these up to be, we're going to repeat this process 4 times, right? Oops. Except these will now be 1. All right, now I might even take it a step further here, and since each question is going to have an answer, I might go A1, but my head's saying was if I do A1, A2, A3, A4 for each one of them, which one does that belong to? So I'm actually going to probably have to do this. Probably going to have to say Q1, answer 1, right? Question 1, answer 1. You get my meaning? So let's come up with some creative stuff to put here. What's your favorite brand of cereal? Captain Crunch. Can I put in a vote? Thank you, class. Let's fix all these right away. I mean, come on, Honey Nut Cheerios. That's a classic.
There you go. Cracker in the, yeah.
Okay, one more. What do we need?
Raisin Bran.
Man.
Come on, something.
How do you
sugary.
Raisin Bran
Something
without shit? I'm sorry. I just like raisin.
Something sugary and most likely radioactive.
Chocolate
We'll give you
Oh, it's not that good. All right, so for each question, we're setting the question, but then for each question, we're also going to set the answers, right? So let's get the syntax going for that. So question 0. Now we're going to do set. See how it finds it automatically? It knows what I want. It's almost as good as Google. And what are we going to put in? Q1A1. Now the question, we're still referring to the same question, so I'm not going to be changing these. It's all related to question 0. So we're setting the question, and then we're setting each answer. Right.
You have set answer 1 4 times.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, that's not my debugger. My built-in brain debugger working for me. All right, so now, once again, we're going to repeat this process. All right, and then for right now, you should go through and have, obviously, 4 different questions and 4 different answers, but I'm considering my work done because I'm just demoing here. You guys, right? But I do need to tweak all of these things so that they're right. Right, so slow down.
Slow down.
Well, excuse me.
Thank you.
I'll come back down to this. So each one of the questions is going to have a setup like this, but I want to make sure that these numbers here are all correct. So this is question 2, so all these need to change to 2s, right? And then these all have to be 3s and 4s. Control S to save. All right. Yeah, for loop could have been used here. The way I'm looking at it is because we're only dealing with 4 right now, we're fine. But if we did set up a for loop, we could hypothetically set it up so we can put in any number of questions we want, and we just change a couple little things, like the number of questions we're making, and boom, the whole thing happens automatically to a point. And then really what would be best practice in that scenario is that all of this stuff would actually be in an external file or a database, and we would read it in instead of having it present, right, Brandon?
I can demo that.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. Maybe at the end of class we'll do that. All right. So each one of these questions here is also going to have these answers associated with it. So you can see how like we're generating what is seemingly a huge amount of code just for one method. And now we just have to make sure that all our numbers are good. So these are all going to have to be 1s. This is for question 2. This is one of those scenarios where I wish I had a regular keyboard instead of a laptop keyboard because I can go much faster. All right, and then we also have to change these. All okay? You should say no. This is going to be question 2. So some of this is, being methodical and logical. And you see how I'm, like, whatever the actions are that are similar, I'm doing them all at the same time because you get into the flow and the system of it. And I think that's good. So now what we've done so far is we've created our classes, we created this method. If we run the program, it will instantiate those questions with the answers and create a spot to store the tallies. And that part's done. So this section's done. So look how much we crossed off our list already. All right. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But we already did. Oh, we did display tallies.
Yeah, Tally.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. We did do that, didn't we? All right. So let's do the next one, which is display main menu. That should be a piece of cake, right? In fact, I'm going to be really smart, and I'm just going to copy this.
Would that be the same thing in other static void?
Yeah, this would be a public static void. It's not going to return anything. We're just putting stuff up on the screen. And because of my conveniently written pseudocode, some of this stuff is kind of already created for me. I am putting this stuff inside of comments just as a matter of good practice. But all the stuff is there for me to take now. Really, this is going to be a series of system out print lines, right? And I'm probably going to have a whole bunch of these. Something like that, I'm just guessing. I always like to leave a blank line up at the top. And then maybe I'll do a little ASCII art here. Actually, I'm going to put another blank line in there. What are our choices? Well, I'll just type it in. Take the survey. I'm taking the ASCII art to the extreme here. I think at this point we want to, maybe another blank line would be good. And if it's still in my buffer here. A blank line's not really a blank line, is it? You guys do not have to do this the way I'm doing it. I just kind of like things to look nice. Well, that's a really good question. Let's do a Control S to save and let's talk about it for a second. Okay, so what was just suggested was that. Oh, I did. Oh, yes, I did. Thank you. I'm getting a little obsessed with this. All right, so what you proposed was, do we want to have the user enter the information here, right? I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Do we have to do it that way? No. My feeling on this, at least at the moment, is let's leave this alone for now. You know, it's really cool about how far we've gotten, but we can actually run it now. Oh, yeah. Somebody caught on really quick. Remember when we were working on this part of it? And I said this would be our main program body. So I can go through and, is that what we call it? Create questions? That would be the first step. What's the next thing we're doing? Display main menu. So you kind of see the approach here. We got all these other methods doing the work. The main program body is nice and clean. What are we doing first? We're creating questions. What are we doing next? Displaying the menu. So when I went to run the program, it ran. It did exactly everything that was in the main method, which was nothing. But now we actually have it doing something, so if it creates the questions, nothing will get shown on the screen. Although I guess, one thing that we could do is we could just do a little system out print line here. We don't have to do this, but I would do this for, basically troubleshooting. So, looks like a welcome message, but really what it is it's telling us that the program is working. All right, so let's put our semicolon at the end there. Oh, well, the compiler would have told me that in a hurry, so here we go, let's run it. Line 9. Now you guys know you can click on these. Student survey, Java 55. What's that line 9? Create questions. Well, that's because it was called from here. So we got a problem here. It says null pointer exception. Now why is it not underlining in my program? That's what I want to know. It gave us an exact line number. I mean, I don't see any problems here. Right, we're just calling the method. Right, and obviously the name is right, otherwise it would underline. So why then does it take us to line 55? So obviously these are all good. So what's going on here? Okay, I see you smiling, Brandon, because you know what's going on. Do you want to enlighten us?
Sure. You're setting all the variables to a position in the array that has no object. You can create any question objects.
Oh, you're going to have to do that too?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you suggest they do that?
You could do it there, I suppose.
Here?
At the very top, yeah.
Give me an example.
So question Q of, so let's say question 1 equals new question.
Is that, but I want to be really careful here. Are we instantiating the right thing? So for example, looking at what we've created here.
How do you want to do it? Well, I guess you could do it different ways. I think the quickest programmatic way would just be to do a for loop and then just add new question every time the loop runs.
Okay. But what if we just, let's get one statement correct and let's go from there. Because we can loop it after we get one to work. So, I mean, it's pointing to this line. So we created an array of questions, right? But now we need to refer to it and actually instantiate the individual one, right? So here is the first question, and we want to set the question for it. What's our syntax? I want you guys to think about this for a second. All right, one of the keys to understanding what's going on here is in this step, we created an array that's capable of holding question objects. Right? If we were going to create an array of strings, we would say a string, array of strings equals new string with a certain number of positions, and then to put something into those positions, they still have to be strings that need to be created to be put in there. So we need to do exactly the same procedure here. So we really need to say, right, we're creating a question to put inside the question array. Smile and nod.
Right there with you, Mr. Yes.
Thank you, class. People who are listening to this video, can only imagine what they're thinking. Anything else we need to do? No, we just need to create them, right? Got to add them to what? Now we got to add them to the array. So how are we going to add them to the array? Well, what is our array called? Question, right? So really, these aren't right. Or are they? All right, okay. So we're going to add them to the array. So question, or is it questions? I forget. Question, position 0. What do you think? Thumbs up? Now we just need to tweak these. The shift key instead of up arrow these tiny little keyboards. All right, so just to reiterate, we created an array that's capable of holding question objects. Then we came down here, we created the question objects, and then we put them in the array positions. Then we go through, we set up all our questions. Then we take all the stuff that we created as strings and we populate them. Okay, let's save it and run it and cross our fingers and hopefully it works. Yay!
Now look, this is.
Go ahead, question?
No, the guy that created the question. No, there you go.
All right, I'm going to pause for just a sec. All right, so we were just doing a little bit of a review of the things we just talked about. And I'm just adding a little something there just to make it look a little prettier. And so we're creating the questions, we're displaying the menu, and now we need to move on to the next step. All right, let's go back to our pseudocode. Get some $signs in here. All right, so one real crucial component is that we're going to have to figure out a way to capture the information that the user is going to type in. Because right now the program runs, it puts up the menu, it's done. Might look like it's waiting for input, but it's not. What we need to do is tell the program to get the selection. How do we get something from the keyboard? Oh, look, I even kind of started writing this one. All right. Well, if we need to have a scanner, well, we already created one. Yay. All right. Wonderful. But we need to create this method now. And I'm actually going to choose to put that here. All right, so here it says get user choice. It says this method must return a result of type int. So all it's saying is at the bottom, it's got to return something. Whether or not it's going to be 0, probably not. All right, so it's going to return an int. We want to prompt the user, obviously. Let's start there. So let's prompt them and say system out print. What are we going to ask them?
You already did ask them.
Oh, I already prompted them.
In this program, we work either way.
Yeah. So I don't need to put a prompt in there because
The print at your first enter selection.
yeah, I could do that. Because that, right, because that's going to be true every time, right? Let's put it here. And then we're going to capture the input. This would be a great spot to just create, let's call it user choice. And what that's going to be equivalent to, what's our scanner called? Input? Is that right? Input, and we're going to have to do a next int. That's it, right?
You're going to return user choice.
Yeah, we do want to return user choice, absolutely. Anything else we need to do here? Will this work?
No,
Why?
because you need to validate it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we want to validate whether the selection works or not, right? Okay. Let's go to our pseudocode. Use a scanner to get input. Oh, look, I even called it the same thing I did here. And now I'm doing a thing that says, if not valid, loop and prompt the user again. So that almost makes me think that that's a separate method, actually.
Why don't you just do it if statement?
You could.
I could, but, okay, so if I was just to do an if statement, and if it was wrong, then what would happen?
You would have to use that on your notes.
And then what would the else be? Reprompt. So, and then what if they did it wrong again?
Well, then it looks like you need a while loop.
Yeah, while the user is clueless or unable to type. All right, so, okay, so I'm going to just tell you that I think that a real logical approach here, and you can handle this a number of different ways logically. I'm going to just say that at the outset. So just because I'm doing it this way doesn't mean that your program logic has to be identical. But for me, it makes sense if we're following our program flow in our pseudocode, right? That's the next thing that happens. But if we're getting user choice, notice that get user choice returns something. All right, so we got interrupted there just for a brief moment, but notice that I was looking at our pseudocode, and notice that was our next step. But you see here that user choice returns a value. So if it returns a value, it has to have somewhere to go, right? So we actually need to set something up to receive the value. It's going to be an int coming back, right? It's exactly the variable name I was thinking of. Now it's still flagging here. It says change get user choice to static. I better obey. Okay. The underlines have gone away. Let's save it. All right, now the next thing that's going to happen, and this is where we kind of have a little bit of hole in our logic, frankly, because we really didn't accommodate for this. So we got the choice. Now what are we doing with it? In fact, here's that accommodation. I already kind of thought about it in advance, that question mark. Where's the big loop that keeps the program running? We're about to do it right now. Okay, so what should we call it? What's going to be the one that keeps the whole thing running? Take survey, display survey, run survey. All right, so now we have something else to create. Oh, wonderful. But I'll tell you what, this is a really important one. And look, we just basically did this. And so conveniently, there's a space there because we're going to run the survey. And the first thing we're going to do when we run the survey, this is going to hold okay. So let's go back to our program then. And since we know we're going to do that, and we called it what? Just run survey. Now we haven't created it yet, so of course it's going to underline it. But if we're going to run survey, should we send it the choice that we just received? All right, so here's my logic. And you remember we kind of did one of these where it's like type this or 999 to quit. Remember we're doing that? This is the same approach we're going to use right now. So we're going to run our survey. We're going to send the choice in. So now we got to do a little bit of logic. Instead of going to pseudocode, though, I think I'm fairly comfortable we can just do it right here inside of Eclipse. So I'm going to put that method right here. And pretty much think it's not going to return anything. Let me just say void for now. We can always change it. I'm going to call it run survey, parens, curlies, but we are sending something to it, aren't we? All right, what were we sending to it? Choice? What do we want to call it here? Does it matter? Anybody want to give me something? Choice. Oh, just choice again. That's fine. Will it conflict? No, because it's isolated from the other one. All right. Now, we already kind of have as a given here that we're going to write a while loop. And that's going to have some sort of parameters and some sort of statements. Now, I am going to take a quick pause. In fact, I am going to end this video here, and I'm going to start another one, and we're going to pick up right where we left off.